Hello, this is Black Country Blokes chewing the fat.
Listen.
I've been hearing a lot lately about men don't talk, but in my experience, men do talk, just people aren't listening. So it's going to be me and a group of blokes discussing our struggles and victories through life. Warning, there may be some bad language, so apologies to all the moms, especially my own. Let's get going.
Listen.
This is Black Country Blokes chewing the fat. With me, Kev Dillon, Craig Pinches, Lee Cadman, Aaron Jew. And today we're joined by a very special guest, Marcus Leonard. Now Marcus works within the mental health in the Black Country. Now today what we want to do is give a bit of information about mental health and about sometimes how to get in touch with mental health. So a lot of times we're phoning these organisations when we're right at our brink, when we're going to the doctor when it's too late, or we're going to for a 999. So what I'd like today is for Marcus to give some information about other numbers that we can phone and different organisations that we can contact. So thank you first of all for coming on.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
So I look after IAPT, which is Improved Access to Psychological Therapies. It's a national enterprise. It's part of the NHS. It's British. It's 2006. Two fellas, David Clark, Professor David Clark. Have you watching Jordan Peterson on YouTube? Yeah. So we've got our own Jordan Peterson, and he's called David Clark, Professor David Clark. He came up with IAPT with I can't remember his names. Two guys. The other one was a politician, and they realised that mental health in the country was getting out of hand. Yeah. You know, we were going from 20%, more and more, and it was instead of like 1 in 10, it was virtually everybody at some point. Yeah. And traditionally you'll have a clinical psychologist that you'll turn to at times like these, beyond your GP, and there just weren't enough of them, you know. So they said, what we're going to do, and so they organised this improved access. And what they did, they got people from the community, and there'd be people like hairdressers, women that worked on the checkouts, barmaids, people that you'd go to and talk to anyway, and they brought them into an organisation. So they were the front door, and then a clinical psychologist would sit at the back. They would talk to lots of people, and they'd be watching from the back and pointing everyone in the right direction. Right, they're a bit more serious, they need to go there, they're not so bad, send them to the GP for medication, and we'd get through a lot of people fast. This is from 2006 when it started.
Is that recent?
Yeah. Not the Levison inquiry. I should have done this, and I'm sorry.
Don't let the trip in and have a good story.
Yeah. So since then, IAPT has become the most successful psychological strategy the world has ever seen. So it's gone up and down the country. It's gone to Germany, California, Canada, Sweden, Israel, I think Hong Kong. They're just, the world in its entirety are copying what we're doing because we get through people so well and so quickly. Yeah. Now what IAPT does, it doesn't use clinical psychologists. What we do, we train people for very specific interventions. So if you took 100 lads who had anxiety, what you'd find is that there are very similar themes through all of their individual experiences. They've all got a story to tell, and they'll be different. And all those stories will be unique to them.
I think we found that ourselves, haven't we, talking to each other? That although our experiences are different, actually the outcomes of those and the treatment can be the same.
Yeah, so we run groups and for that reason, because the stories will be punctuated by the same physical sensations, changes in thinking, you know, beliefs about uncertainty, and all these things will start to turn for those people. And we know this because one of the things IAPT does, we ask people to fill forms in every time we see them and check how they're doing on scales. So what we've done, we've created a massive amount of data, and what that allows us to do, like plugging your reader into your car, is monitor it very carefully when it starts to go wrong, when it starts to go right. So we know to get people quicker. So we We've gone through a digital revelation in 2019. Jumping the gun a bit there. We've got, in Dudley and Walsall, I'll tell you about what we've got here. We've got, Dudley particularly, we've got a fantastic IAPT team. A lot of them were mental health nurses. They're all very skilled in delivering the most common anxiety and disorders. So you've got social phobia, post-traumatic stress disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, health anxiety, the really common and most prolific anxiety disorders that we see now, and of course depression and everything that goes with them. Now, we used to think that anyone with a mental health disorder, it would be like breaking a leg and going to A&E. 1 minute they're all right, 1 minute you know somebody and they're doing all right, and the next minute they've gone down with it. And we'd see them, just like you said, when they got quite bad. But then when we start to talk to people, we say, well, what were you doing 6 months ago? What were you doing 12 months ago? When did you start to get, when could we have got to you and helped you out?
But I always think, wouldn't it be a great idea if we get these people at primary school level, so we're not waiting until they're an offender and trying to fix them once they've had a lifetime of regurgitating bad habits over and over. If you went, well, Kev, why are you angry? Why are you playing up? Why do you keep crying? And Dad did this, I'm fat, I've lost my eyes, and build on it and give them the tools to deal with it at early doors. Instead of, we have these people at the end of their tether. I've been a heroin addict for 20 years. I'm a repeat violent offender. And you go, and isn't it such a shame when you see them? You can just keep trying to plaster over the cracks instead of laying the brickwork right in the first time.
You're absolutely right. We've got to get to young families and children and not just help the people who've got the disorders now, but stop this from happening. There's a great thing to look up on the internet. It's called the Adverse Childhood Events, and we call it an ACE scale. Some brilliant work that's been done clinically. Now, if you look at, I think it's an 11-point scale, 10 or 11-point scale, and it's how many adverse events you've had in childhood. And literally, if as you count up that scale about, that's happened, that's happened, that's happened, you jump from one category to the next, from problems with difficulties regulating your emotions, difficulties with substances, getting in trouble with the police, you know, and literally, if you've had those events go on in life, that's what's going to happen to you in your adulthood. And there's very little way around it. The stats are like, why are we not going back to young mums and dads and saying, listen, you know, who knows what a good parent is or a bad parent, but whatever you do, don't do that. This means if you do that, you'll end up with that, you know? And we should be feeding this back better than we do. And we're trying. We are trying. A
lot of times it's, we warn you when it's, well, you shouldn't have done that. All I was doing was what I've been taught through my experience.
Absolutely,
And monkey see, monkey do. And I think if we can have these classes of teaching people, this is the mechanism, you're about to get angry, you're about to, well, why are you getting angry? As you said, isn't it amazing as a child, what Darren on the playground tells you is gospel facts? Because he knows what he's, and that bit of information, or that thing that you saw in your family home, that's ingrained because you're learning it at such a young age. I have no reference to back it up to.
But the parents also have to be a huge part of that, because I think of my bringing up and my mum and dad mental health wasn't about, you know, you didn't know what mental health was. So that it has to start at the parents' point, doesn't it? That you're not afraid to talk to your kids about these things, and you're not afraid to explain that you do get anxiety and explain what that's about. Because I know my daughter suffers from it, to my youngest child. But we try and talk to her about it now, and she sees a mentor, we call her, she's a mentor within school. And things like that.
Know about your daughters, right?
So my youngest is life-limiting disability, but obviously that affects my two eldest quite a lot. And they have struggled, but say there's things we put in place like mentors that go into the school and speak to them, and it's just someone outside of us that they can talk to as well.
Yeah.
And that tends to be easier sometimes than talking to, because I know my daughter thinks she's going to put her worries onto us.
Yeah.
So
Don't you think though?
that out.
Don't you think like, you know, has it always been there, things like, you know, like mental health and things like that, to a severe scale, or is it since the birth, like you say, back in 2006, 2007?
Yeah.
Is that like since the birth? I mean, was that the Facebook? Was that when Facebook was created in about 06? So is it from that point that people started to develop further problems?
It's always been there, hasn't it?
It's always
Just
been
people
there.
haven't
But
talked about it.
you always knew the person in the street that, you know, not politically correct and not by saying that there was the loony, that there was the crazy person and this and the other.
Yeah.
But now everybody seems to have anxieties, everyone seems to have this and the other. Has social media played a big part in creating this beast, or has it just brought this beast to light?
That is a brilliant point, and there are a number of angles to it. And when we look at any kind of problem, a really good thing to do when you get a problem is make it a timeline and pinch it and pull it apart.
Yeah.
Look what happened before and what happened afterwards. And if we go back to our evolutionary past, I mean, using evolution as a kind of yardstick, and we look back to our time in groups, in the most, if you look at the stages of our development, the Stone Age is, it's, if we've been here a metre in time, then if you come in a millimetre at one end and a millimetre at the other, that's the Stone Age.
Yeah.
We've been here for a blink. Now, what we do know is that there's some pygmy tribes up near the Philippines, and they're they live in a traditional life in terms of they've not been affected by the modern way, if you like, and capitalism.
So all they're worried about is a roof over their head and food in the bellies.
Absolutely. Mortality is worse for them. Day-to-day problems are worse for them, but they don't have mental illness. Their numbers of mental illness are like 1 in 10,000. So you know, when we talk about, well, there's a, you know, we went through a time of saying, you're not making enough of this chemical, you're not making enough of that chemical, and you know, here's some medication for this and some medication for that, and you put that in perspective and you think, wow, what's going on? And that's not to diss medication. Medication does a real good stuff for a lot of people, but it's a brilliant point, you know, when, like you say, the loony bins, you know, the asylums of the 100 years ago, when we first started to put people there that we just didn't understand. We didn't understand what was going wrong. I think it was the 60s, you know, clozapine started to be developed, and they just emptied. This medication came along, and just people were just, they were better. So we've become really enthralled with this idea of medication, which, you know, you take a complicated, a person who's got lots of different things going on in life. You've got adverse childhood events, they've got a complex family situation, or an illness alongside it. And is medication going to fix all those things? You know, it's such a tricky problem.
I think it's like what Kev said, you're papering over the cracks at that point, aren't you? You're just trying, instead of dealing with the root of what's going on.
And we have children up here, and it's Kevin doesn't sleep. He doesn't sleep. And what's he eat? Well, he has McDonald's for breakfast. He has a Red Bull. He has this. He plays on his Xbox all day. And I'm like, he's not naughty. He's buzzing. He's doped up.
And he's not
So
using that energy.
what we'll do then, to counter the E numbers, we'll give him Ritalin. So we're giving him speed by day, heroin by night, and then we wonder how he's going to be in the next 20 years.
Indeed.
You know what I mean? I think that, as you said, medication is brilliant when it's needed.
Yes.
But I think sometimes we're taking shortcuts of thinking one shoe fits all. Have this instead of sitting down, talking about the problem.
Sorry to interrupt there. I'm just thinking, how do you change that problem though? So it's all well and good, we can established that a lot of it comes from our parents, for example. And that's not a slight on anyone's parents. We do the best that they know.
Absolutely.
All the time.
Yeah.
But a lot of our environment and the way we see the world from our perspective, every single one of us here, is from the stuff that our parents tell us, the people around us, the school, everything. So we've constructed this just based on our perspective. And I just think, I'm just playing devil's advocate here, I'm just thinking, you then turn around to a parent who, as a parent, you're probably very, very proud to be a parent. I'm not a parent myself. And say, well, actually, maybe you shouldn't have said this to your daughter or your son. And I agree something needs to be done, but have we got a system in place for that? Have we thought about, how do we educate parents? Because I think it's a societal problem that we all need to be accountable for, because we've created this world, effectively. We're now just drowning in it. So
that's a brilliant point, and I think it comes from, when we look back through history, we look back and we think, well, what were they thinking? They were burning witches, and they thought the earth was flat. Let's not go into that one. Let's, wheel, that'll never work. And we've gone back, but what we know is that each time they got to those points and they got those breakthroughs, they thought they were right, and we think we're right now, but the truth has been changing. Year on year on year, and in 100 years' time it will have changed again and again. And I think what's come out of that is that one thing we know about this very effective treatment, we use cognitive behaviour therapy. And the basis of that, the skeleton underneath it, is beliefs. That human beings have a software system.
Well, I think what you're going to say, I think one thing that we did back in the day better than we do nowadays, maybe because of social media, is the community raised people.
Yeah.
If your neighbour or the bloke down the road caught you doing something, go, I'll tell you, Daddy, please don't. And everyone had a part, because you went to the same post office, the same pub. So the village raised the children. Nowadays, you don't know the person living next door to you. And if someone, you kick your ball against their fence, because I'll tell you, Daddy, go, and so what? The teacher says, leave my classroom, he goes, or what? We've lost that, because I think we need love, we need boundaries, and we need community. Like, you need to say, like, I love you, but if you don't do this, then this will happen. This is the consequence. And I think with communities and what you're doing and what the club does, and not just us, all these other wonderful organisations, you fit in somewhere. And as when we said earlier that this was a national strategy, I was telling Kevin the other day that national strategies are great. And the way that we work, it's one of the criticisms is it's written by academics for academics. So academic people do best with it, and academic people work inside it. And that presents a real problem when you get to communities and working out the mechanics of that. And that's the challenge that we've got, to work into communities that are already set with their little ways of being, and if we can start to bridge that gap with things like the boxing clubs and community events, and helping people come together, we get back to that. People have got something to invest in. It's that idea of you learn little things along the way, and I don't know whether you're partial to a bit of littering. But if you imagine that, I mean, some people do, some people don't. And if you're one of these people that just asks to throw something in the bin, you wouldn't dream of doing it. Now, if you imagine that we're sat in a lovely park, a lovely park, and we've got a packet of crisps and a couple of, and some cans, and you wouldn't dream of just going, chuck it over there. You'd be off to the bin, you chuck it, give me yours, I'll chuck it away, let's keep it all clean. Now that's something that most people would do. But if we're all sat in a park and it's this deep in crisp packets and cans, you'd go, right, and this is, I suppose the mental health analogy is that if your community seems broken, if it doesn't give you anything back, what's the point in contributing to it? What's the point in giving, anything that smartens it up a bit? How sad, but how true that is.
So you're right. I think with that, I think that's one thing that drives me crazy, is because I'd feel the urge. I mean, I don't like literally using that analogy anyway, but I'd feel the urge to want to, tidy that up and it'd drive me crazy the fact other people are living in the slum of it. You know what I mean? So I see people throwing the fag ends out the window. I see one the other day, and Chris Packers and whatever else, and I'll constantly say to my partner, these are the same people that will be smoking a phone, drinking a beer, or whatever they're doing, and shit all we live in, and this and the other, and you think, but you've just threw your fag on the floor. This is the shit all you're creating, and then you're moaning about it. And that's what drives me crazy, is when you think there's a problem there, why don't you try and fix it instead of moaning about it?
But I think that's the message underneath, that it doesn't give them anything back. It's a bad relationship.
Yeah,
It's a shit up, not because there's stuff on the floor, because it doesn't give them anything back. And I think we've got to look at that. And going back to your point, you know, I think rules, you said something about it as well. Rules are the things that we see people come with. I used to, you're going to get me, you'll never shut me up. I used to run an anger management group, and it was awesome. It was absolutely brilliant. And what I learned there was that people can take rules way too seriously. So we had a lad in, and he was a veteran, and we kind of all sat in we'd start having a horseshoe, and then over the weeks we'd kind of close it into a circle, and it was a real special place to be. I was very privileged to be part of it at the time that I was. And this lad came in, he was a bit of a chubby lad, but he had a shirt on, and he didn't quite fit in, and he was a deprived area, he was a little bit well cut, you know, and he was quiet, and people were kind of wondering, you know, he didn't really say much. Somebody said to him, "So what's your story, mate?" And he said, he was ex-military, we got out of him at some point, and he too lived by rules, and there was, he lived on a small street, a dead end, and the girl across the road lived with her parents, and the lad, a boyfriend, had a car, and he'd zoom up and down the street, and he had young kids, this lad, and he said to this lad, "Listen, you know, I understand you like to get your foot down, but this is my kids play here, this is a small street, you know, take it easy, you never know you don't see the kid that you run over, you know." And this lad carried on. So he and I'm not condoning this, by the way, but he said, much to the delight of the rest of the group, who felt really kind of, we call virtuous anger, you know, it's quite, and retribution and what have you. So he said to this lad, "If I catch you driving down this street again, we've done the nice talk, if I catch you driving down here too fast again, I'm going to rip you out of that car, and I'm going to wrap one of them windscreen wipers round your neck." And he walked away. And of course, what did that lad do? A couple of days later, so he pulled him out of his car, he broke his window, he pulled him out of his car, he pulled the windscreen wiper off, and he wrapped it round his neck. And he left him where he was, and he went back in his house. These frantic bangs on the door a few minutes later, and it's this girl's dad. And he's like, "You better come out and sort this out. This lad's going purple. We can't get it off his neck." So he ran back, and they really struggled to get this thing off him, you know, the thick arm at the bottom. But he'd done it in temper. So they got this thing off his neck, and that was that. And everyone was like, "Yeah, well, it served him, and that taught him, didn't it? He wouldn't do that again." We didn't know that was the story. It was an interesting story. So about 2 years later, same group, but obviously different people were running the group. And there's a young lad there, and he isn't saying much, and like I say, completely different people. And somebody said, "What's your story, mate?" And he said, "Well, I got done for carrying a knife in my car." And they were like, "Well, right, that's quite serious, you know." And he's like, "Yeah, but I got attacked." So he's like, "All right, well, you know, what good do you think carrying a knife will do?" "Well, I won't get attacked again, will I?" I'm like, "Well, what happened?" He said, "Well, some guy pulled me out of my car and wrapped it." Yeah. So I was like, "Oh." "Oh yeah, I've heard this one."
There's a knock-on effect there, doesn't it?
But this is
perspective, isn't it?
this is the rules, and you say, and this is where we talk about punishment and the idea that if we punish somebody, they won't do it again, and they'll learn, and it's the first principal rule, and that is that that lad didn't learn driving too fast, got you pulled out your car and a windscreen wiper around your neck.
If you're going to do it, be weaponised. And
what he learned was power wins.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
Power wins. That's what he learned. He learned that that guy exerted a lot of force over him, and that won.
Not that I was in the wrong,
Absolutely.
but however, if I am bigger, badder, bolder,
Yep.
I will get what I want. And unfortunately, isn't that the way the country has gone? Someone will cut you up in the car, they're in the wrong, will lean out the window and go, and what? I'll smash your face and think, you were in the wrong. What you should have said was, ever so sorry.
I think it's a lot of the knife culture now, isn't it? Because of that, because people have been threatened, so they walk around with a knife. They then at some point use that knife, which has a knock-on effect to that person. He thinks he's got to carry a knife or a gun,
You are who
and then
you
you
fear.
just keep going, don't you?
You are who you
And
fear.
back in the day, you'd be in the pub, someone would give you a good idea, or a playground, and you get over, you wouldn't go back. But now people stood over you filming it, and that makes you feel like a coward because you can't do nothing, so you have to do something. And that's when heinous things happen from a moment's madness.
You know what I said to someone earlier? Sorry. What I said to someone earlier, it was about like parking and parking tickets. No, I hate giving parking tickets and paying them dead money. But I said to like my partner and someone else today, actually, I said, you know what? We're all old enough now to know how it works and to know the rules. And if we're going to just cross that line a little bit, I'll take my chances. You can't get irate when you're getting what you've earned, basically. You know, and I think that's like with him. He took his chance, he got warned, and he still continued to do it, and he got just deserved.
It's about accountability, isn't it? We've got to take accountability for your
Exactly.
actions.
And that's where we struggle
But
these
the
days.
interesting thing with that story is everyone interprets that in a different way.
Yeah.
So now, as we're adults, for example, if I've done that 2 or 3 times, and somebody's wrapped a window wiper around my neck, I think, bloody hell, I won't do that again because that was the wrong thing and he warned me. Fair play to him. But maybe when I was younger, I might have had that same fear reaction, and then obviously my baseball bat in the car or something. So it's interesting, isn't it, how we all interpret stuff, which then means when we then impose rules on people in society, we have to be mindful of how they interpret it.
Yeah, absolutely. Spot on. And I think what came out of that group in that particular locality was one of the themes that came out, and you're absolutely spot on, that everybody views it in a different way. What they seemed to think was, that'll teach him. That was the, and that's
Teach him what?
absolutely. Well, it did teach him, but it didn't teach him what they thought it was going to teach him. And I think that's the thing, when we strive to live by rules, one of the rules that comes out in anger is that'll teach them. You know, like when we, do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So and it's kind of like, we don't, when we put people in prison, that'll teach them. What will it teach them?
They network and then they know their organisation.
Well, no, look, sometimes he goes to jail for something. He's a drug addict. That'll teach him. But they don't get him off the gear.
No.
They don't give him a plan for when he's out of prison.
That's the problem.
He just goes in there, and then it's just in and out. But what could happen instead of taking him to get cleaned up, moving him away, sorting his external problems away from it, you just keep him in the loop. And once he's been in the loop, it's bloody hard to get out the loop, isn't it?
Yeah.
It can be that, kid, but you also, if you're in that position, there's some people out there who have changed.
I
in
know a
that
lot
system.
of people who've
So
gone to prison and
It also has to be
changed.
your own mindset, doesn't it?
But if you haven't got the mental capacity or the skills to do it, you need skills, or you need love, boundaries, the community around it. But if you're left to your own devices and you haven't got an A, B or C plan, you'll fall back on what you know.
The stats are frightening for people that go into prison and then go back into it. So I worked in a prison for a bit, for about 6 months, which was like fascinating when I was a social worker. And literally, it's literally one in like 50 or 60 that won't come back into prison. But they found most of it was down to societal problems, so low socioeconomic. And effectively what you're doing is they'll go in prison for a stint and then they'll be put back in the same environment. They'll try and get on their feet because they think, I want to get a job. Nobody's giving them a job. They'll then start seeing the same people they're hanging around with, and that's their only coping mechanism or way to get through life. So yeah, I have my own views. Obviously, it's just one man's opinion on the prison system, because I don't think it rehabilitates people as much as you probably want it to. Absolutely, yeah.
I completely agree. If we try, I mean, life's not about a laboratory, but if you try and recreate, because what we're doing is we say that'll teach them is punishment equals learning.
Yeah.
Punishment is some kind of education. Now, I don't know of one instance where punishing somebody enhances the way they learn.
Yeah.
Can't recreate it. It makes it worse. And if you think about anything you wanted to learn, and if you think, would punishment be the way to go? It's kind of like...
Carrot over the stick.
There's got to be...
Yeah, absolutely.
There's got to be some kind of logic behind your method. It's like with my son, I've never had to lay a finger on my son. I've got one who's nearly 8 and one was 2. Now Troy, the 7-year-old, if he did something wrong, I'd warn him. If he kept doing it, I'd take him to bed. I'd say, right, you got 10 minutes. If you backchatted, you got 15 minutes. And I'd keep up in it. Every time he'd do something, I'd be cheeky back. And then I'd leave it his time, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I'd go up, I'd ask him why he's in there to start with. He'd tell me, I'd say, what have you got to say? He'd apologise, we'd hug. And to me, that's done. And he's not been to bed for quite a while. So in the first few years, I did that. Now, if I'd have just belted him, took him, sent him to bed with no logic behind my method, then, you know, by far, you know, the perfect parenting doesn't exist. But me and his mum sort of got a dynamic relationship where we've been able to teach him as opposed to punish him. And I tell him now, like, I'm not punishing you. You know, I'm your best friend, but sometimes I have to be your dad. And what I mean by that is sometimes I have to be the one to guide you, even if it's just a little bit more of a nudge. You know, hopefully you walk the path I'd like you to on your own, but sometimes I have to nudge you. Like you say, the prison system, it locks them up. It don't tell them, or, you know,
We
a lot
don't
of people,
rehabilitate, do we?
what is it they say? Why are you in? Because I got caught. And that's usually the mentality, you know, of it. There's no rehabilitation, like you said, is there?
No.
And that's why I bring the parenting thing into it, because I never mindlessly punished my child for something I considered wrong. My dad used to have a saying, and it was, do as I say, not as I do. You know, and that kind of hypocrisy is what created, you know, he's a great dad and all, but he's one of the old-fashioned guys, you know.
Have you got any comments, by the way?
Yeah, I'll run through them now, actually. One, Daniel Davis, doing a great job.
How been you done?
Talking about mental health problems is hard for a man. Ian Hines, hello gents, great work.
How been you read?
Stephen Ansell, you may be able to answer this one. Evening gents, great to see you all in again, well done on the radio. My question is, do we think that everybody who says they have anxiety, etc., actually have it and understand what it is, or are they just joining the fad that when they're a bit down, it must be anxiety?
No, not at all. I've done a bit of work in prisons, and
Fascinating, isn't it?
yeah, it is. Never met anyone I thought should be there. I worked on a prison on an island out off the coast of France, and there was a young girl in there, and it was my job to go in and do what I could, and she was, something wasn't tallying up. She was only young, she was about 18, 19, and I soon found that I was talking to her about being upset and being anxious, and she always give me a puzzled look, and I'd be like, there seems to be something going on there. When I say anxious, you seem to be, she's like, well, no, I mean upset. And I was like, well, what do I mean when I mean anxious? Well, she said, well, it's the same thing, isn't it? I was like, is it? She said, yeah, it's the same word for the same thing. And I think everybody's got a different version of what anxious is for them. And it's a good point, and of course, there are people that need to hang the coat on something that's happening for them and give it a label. And I think that anxiety is prolific in today's society. It is, everyone will experience it. That as soon as you get that flush and you feel that feeling in your chest, that's anxiety. Whether it's the centre of your problems, or whether your problems come centre around it, or whether it is a consequence of them, it is a big topic. But we don't want people to feel that they can't mention it, or they're jumping on a bandwagon. And I think a really good question. a very tricky one.
But then, because I always say, I've lived my whole life on nerves. Nerves have pushed me into doing stuff, whereas anxiety and panic attacks have held me back sometimes. Like if I've got to jump in the boxing ring, I'm thinking, there's a high chance he's going to smack me in the face. Or if I do this, that's the nerves. But I think when you have them anxiety attacks, it's not, I've got an exam tomorrow, I'm a bit worried. It's that, I can't get out of this house. I feel like I'm going to have a stroke. And I think that's the difference of it. And I think sometimes it's become a throwaway comment. Like me, I'm ready to be blind, I can't see this, so I've got 7%. Then someone with glasses will go, take these off and blind. I go, no, you've got bad eyes. But it's just become a new throwaway thing.
Yes. I think one of the things that people get exasperated about with a partner or with a friend who says they're anxious, one of the big deals with anxiety is avoidance. And it's one of the difficult things that when we started to measure anxiety early on, we didn't measure avoidance. So when people were avoidant, and you know, if you're anxious about, I don't know, balloons, and you never see any, well, you're not anxious, but you only need to see one and you are. So if you just get good at dodging them and staying out of the way, is that, have you still got anxiety or what? And so, you know, if you've got a friend and you arrange to go out and they kind of start making excuses and don't want to go, and then eventually blame it on their anxiety, that can get really frustrating, because anxiety is a fascinating subject, and it's all, well, fear and adrenaline, and it can be triggered by anything, you know, and you know, people are frightened of flies, aren't they? You know, and you know, there's a fly in the kitchen, and you've got people screaming and running for their lives, and you're 50 times bigger, and it's never going to hurt you. But that infuriates them more, because
to them it's petrifying.
It's petrifying, and one of the things we do in, I'm jumping the gun, but I think it can be very frustrating to be around people with anxiety, because they become a little bit unpredictable.
You know, I've got two questions actually. One is, you know, with anxiety, you know, if you see someone and they're constantly posting selfies and they're out clubbing or pubbing and I'm very active, say, on the social medias, but then they claim to have anxiety. Is it still possible they've got anxiety? Because I know there's a lot of misconceptions there where they think, well, you're posting loads of pictures of you smiling and laughing and that, you don't suffer anxiety, you must have anxiety.
Very good point. Look at the great comedians who were depressives behind closed doors.
Williams.
It's amazing what you can hide, isn't it, really, from even close people, let alone people that you don't know.
So that people with depression know how to laugh, they know how to smile, and they probably know better than everybody else, because they use it as a front. And you know, people with anxiety will burst through it, and they're not anxious about everything. And so when they're in a situation that they're not anxious about, or they've had a few bevies, you might get them over enjoying what it is, and you're thinking, you're the life of the soul of the party, there's no wrong with you. And I think this is where the problem is with, you know, a broken leg's a broken leg, but mental health is a little bit different.
It's feeling.
It is.
That leads me to my other question. Is like, what's your opinion on bipolar disorder? Because, I mean, that's something that I'll go through. The depression side of things, believe it or not, I can manage. You know, they don't faze me at all, because I know that I'll go down. No nice period, I know, but it's that interchanging. You know, walking in the kitchen, you're completely someone different. The overspending beyond your means, and you know, a lot of that stuff I'll go through. And bipolar rage over the last few years is something I developed. Tried to get treatment from the GP for it and whatever else, and I was met to not a very good outcome, so I stopped going. And it's like literally a blind rage, you know. And I was told that that's called bipolar rage. What's your opinion on that? How can you determine bipolar disorder from depression and anxiety or whatever else? Can you still be BPD if you've only got two of them, or do you have to have multiples?
BPD, I can tell you what I know about it, but I'm a bit out of my pay grade.
That's fine.
IAPT is common mental health difficulties. Bipolar puts you in the hands of specialist mental health nurses and psychiatrists. And it is a debilitating problem for the people that have it. Medication can be really effective. I've remembered the brain regions that are affected. I could tell you those, but I don't deal a lot with people with bipolar disorder. We do occasionally get them through the service, but again, you could say that bipolar is an extreme version of the emotional regulation difficulties that we get at a lower level, so that when people, the mood catches them out, it becomes a dominant force in their life, and we all know that, where you're just not feeling, I'm not feeling it today, well, magnified quite some time, but for someone with bipolar and that unexpected change, that must be really tough. But the minute changes that we face within normal levels of psychology, you know, we know those feelings can become the centre of the universe, and it's very difficult to see past them. So when you've got bipolar, there's singular CG25 and PCG31, I think, are the areas involved with bipolar, and that snapping backwards and forwards. And it doesn't matter what context you're in, it will just happen, you know, and so that must be, and I think one of the underlying things about all of this is something we've kind of skirted around is the perception of reality, and reality is something that we hold on to as really concrete. Out there is a concrete reality, and we can all hang on to it in the same way. And you said it about, you know, about everybody having a different perception. We know reality is a really frail thing, really frail, and it's difficult. It's difficult to hold on to it in the same way, and it's really easy for it to start to make an alternative reality to start to make sense. And you know, and bipolar disorder can feed into that. You know, with some ferocity.
Like you say, I mean, a lot of things are umbrella terms, aren't they? Like you say, everyone's got their version of anxiety and whatever else. It is umbrella terms and severity levels. You know, some people have got it, like you had it, you said it was very debilitating, you were really good of anxiety. Now you can have mild anxieties, you can have, so just because you're only feeling that little bit. I mean, I've started to feel like I had a music networking event last week, and I didn't want to go, and all day and for a couple of days I felt something in my stomach and thought, I really don't want to go, really don't want to go, really don't want to go. And I ended up going and I was okay. But that build up, it wasn't I didn't want to go, it was I felt like I've got to be in that room with new people, and this only other this is a part of, well, it's in Birmingham, so that tells you probably why half of why I didn't want to go. Sorry for the brothers out there. But like, it's created, like, there is different levels.
So is there, like, for someone like Craig, is there an organisation you could, off the top of your head, think of, like, if he was feeling how he's feeling? Like, we've had Nick Davis, who comes on here regularly. Next week we've got Ian from Mental Health at First, who's a charity organisation. Is there telephone numbers or websites you can give out there?
Yeah.
Like, sometimes we get to the GP, and it's just, well, unless you've got a broken leg or a cold, I ain't really got a clue to do with it.
You know what, though, Kim? I went to the GP this time last year, and he put me on the very same second, sent me straight to the mental health nurse who got me signed into treatment that day.
Depends on what GP though, doesn't it?
Well, definitely, but I think there is a lot of good work going on with regards to it as well.
Is there any numbers off the top of your hand?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know we've got people around the country, so not just in the locality. So if you go on, every listener in the UK that you've got, if they type in IAPT into Google, they've got a local unit, and what they do is they will give you, in ascending severity, they will give you a treatment that matches the condition that you've got. If it's too severe and it's things like bipolar that's not manageable or currently under control, they will pass you on to the services that are appropriate, and they're focused on your mental health. We need to do a complete session on anxiety, because that case in point that you said there, that feeling in your stomach, that's common to everybody, and with anxiety, and you'll know that as well. And that's not about bipolar. That's about your stomach, and it's that interpretation of that sensation. A person who hasn't got debilitating anxiety in that area will interpret that sensation as excitement.
I've heard that.
But a person who's going into a situation that they're frightened of will interpret it as this is doom.
It's the same sensation, different perspective.
It's exactly, it's adrenaline. What it is that when adrenaline hits your bloodstream, muscles in your core clamp down and open up and send blood in different direction at different pressures. Now, one of the things that happens is there's two main areas that go through a deficit in blood pressure. One is your brain, your cortex, and the other one's your gastrointestinal system. So everything from your lips to your arse. And everything in there is maintained by a blood supply from the other side. And when that blood pressure drops off, in your gut, that blood pressure will show itself as it's butterfly. You know, you lie on your arm, your butterflies in your stomach are pins and needles in your stomach. It's your blood pressure dropping in your stomach.
Aaron said that to me the other day. He said your stomach is like your second brain. Because it's like your second brain, and he said that to me.
I did a bit of research on it, so I'm always interested in trying to improve it. So one of the ways is through health, and my diet's quite flexible in terms of I eat healthy for half the day, but because I lose weight, because I'm always active, the rest of the day I'm just eating like willy-nilly basically.
Oh, no one likes him do that. I can eat what I want, and I'm still good looking.
What I found through the research was that it was affecting my gut microbiome because I'm eating a lot of processed foods, for example, like bags of crisps, chocolates, and that sort of stuff. And what that does is then obviously decrease the blood flow to your brain, and mental illness is effectively something ill with your brain. And the ways to obviously reduce that is obviously to have better stuff. So you're not disturbing the gut bacteria that's already there, which obviously sends signals to your brain. So what I'm doing is I'm not only disturbing it, then I'm affecting the blood flow to my brain. I know it's all a bit scientific, I'm trying to get more into it, but then effectively then my anxiety is a lot worse. So I recognise now, if my diet's not right, even like before I'm going out to see my friends and stuff, I can pick it up, I'm like, I shouldn't have eaten that. And it's gone that particular with myself, because I get a bit of IBS as well. Whereas when I eat better foods, I'm so much better for it. And another one is, and this isn't like slant on anyone, but just to lose weight, because apparently the more overweight you are, you actually decrease the blood flow to your brain as well. So these are just little tips that will just put the odds in your favour, basically, if you can just decrease them ever so slightly. But it's helped me.
How we have got one question off Nick. If Nick don't mind, I'll get to in a minute. But like you're on about food, I was on about food. How significant is your diet to anxieties and to...
You are what you eat, the old saying, isn't it?
Again, I'm slightly out of my pay grade. A dietitian would be better to ask. There are some foods which, so there's a key ingredient, and I have to start remembering all the words now. So serotonin, we've all heard of that, and your SSRIs and your and the essential neurotransmitter. So serotonin only comes from food. It's not something that we manufacture. And it's, has anybody got Google on? There's a phrase, you get it in egg whites.
It'll come to me.
It'll come to me. And it's the precursor, 5-HT, and there's a precursor before that. Kidneys in sea lions are full of it. Egg whites, cheese, things like that. They're full of 5-HT and the precursor to serotonin. Now, when they do clinical trials, they can hold people away from these foods, and they do find that it increases anger levels. So there's a lot going on there, but you'd have to speak to a specialist to find out how that would actually work itself. Now, one thing that I do bleat on about is actually food we can think is a big deal, and it is. Sleep is the biggest deal. Sleep is massive.
Well, you know, most of us have got kids here. When you've had a good night's sleep, you can face the world. When your kid has kept you up for 4 nights on the spin, you're praying to God. You've got 30 minutes sleep between you and your missus, and she's going, I'm tired. She goes, how bloody dare Sleep tight. We can both be tight. We're a team. We're a team. But when you haven't had sleep, insomnia, you've been out on a bender for days and days, drinking drugs, or you've got that child, or you're up studying for days upon days, and nothing goes. You're not yourself. You're delirious. You're sleep deprived. You're hallucinating. We need that sleep, don't we?
We do. I could talk to you all night about the effects of sleep and how crucial it is. Tryptophan. Tryptophanic foods is the word I was looking for. So if you look for foods with tryptophan in,
they go good or bad, tryptophan?
Well, these are the precursors to serotonin. And of course that's regulated. So you don't. Again, I mean, dietitian territory. That's associated with that. But you do need it. Some of it. You don't want to go hammering it, I imagine.
Moderation, like everything.
Absolutely, yeah. But in terms of sleep, wow. Psychosis and the very worst of mental illnesses and sleep deprivation are one and the same thing. We still can't pull them apart. So when we get somebody who's sleep deprived, they're psychotic. When we get somebody who's psychotic, they're sleep deprived. It's one and the same thing.
Yeah, brilliant.
Now, when we look at the experiments that went on with monophasic and polyphasic sleep patterns, so this is where we get people, we experiment with different types of sleep and different regions of the world. And the Greeks are great, a great community, and people who get the life balance right. And there was an experiment, it might be 15 years old now, but there's an island in Greece, and I can't remember the name of it, my Greek's not right up there, but it translates as the island where people don't die. Somebody out there will know that.
Yes, someone.
Calisphera. They'll know that. And
cheers, David Attenborough.
and it's polyphasic sleep. So they have two episodes. They have an afternoon siesta. Now, some of those people went on a sleep program to look at what were the effects of changing their sleep pattern into monophasic, like ours in the Western societies. They got all the terrible diseases in that group of people that we get, despite the diet. So the diet counted for nothing, and the sleep counted for everything. Now I know these are experiments, and you can't be sure unless you've got a control group for everything. But that told me a lot, you know.
I read a book on it. I read an 8-hour book on sleep. It's called Sleep Smarter by Sean Stevenson, and same stuff as yourself. He says so he's a health nutritionist. He's one of the best in the world. He says the first thing he always recommends to every single person before exercising, before dieting, is get your sleep right. You have to be sleeping. But he talks about the quality of sleep as well. And again, it goes back to what we started the episode with in terms of like the old Stone Age years and stuff. Like obviously we never had clocks and stuff. It was all by light. So even having a bit of light coming into your room and stuff can affect. You've got cells on your skin that you're still not sleeping right. So if you've got a bit of light, like I'm just trying to think in a room, like a lamp, that sort of stuff, you're actually not resting, your body's not at full rest. So like me and the missus, because I get fascinated by this stuff, and I have blackout blinds and everything, and there's certain planks and stuff you can bring into it. So if anyone's interested in it, obviously, for a few hours you can enhance your life moving forward.
But how simple is it? Back in the day we had an alarm clock to wake us up. Now we have the phone, but I never had my phone, because you lie in there, you can't sleep, bleep, I'll check it. I'll check it. So your bed is for whatnot and for sleep. But it's snoring. Right, Mum.
Living like me.
But it's funny, I mean, someone who can't, I sleep better now than I ever have, but them days, my head's going over. Your bed and your mattress is the only thing to not come with instructions. So all you've got to do is lie there, you're going to sleep, and then you lie there thinking, I've got to be up in an hour, 50 minutes.
To be fair, I struggle with sleep, even if it's black in the room. Like I close my eyes, and it's like, even now when I close, it's like there's a light still on, and a lot of things normally run through your head, and I struggle with sleeping. And I always said I hate sleeping because I like to be productive, I like to be doing stuff, and I know it's a requirement and you need it. But even if I close my eyes, it drives me crazy. it's like there's a light still on the inside of my eyes, even if the room's black, which I suffer with a lot.
Yeah, one of the things that I would like to remind people is that you are the product of 300 million years worth of evolution. Given the right conditions, you'll sleep. The amount of people that we see, you know, sleep disorder clinics have a lot of people go through. People with genetic sleep problems are few and far between. Take it as read, again, out of your pay grade, but take it as read that you, given the right conditions, you'll sleep. And it's absolutely, as you say, light, temperature. Adenosine is a hormone that we produce all day, that when it builds up to a point, when we've got enough, we'll sleep. And the other one, what did I say? Light, temperature, adenosine, stress. Now, and this is where anxiety and treatment for anxiety in IAPT is so useful, is if you can deal with your anxious thoughts in a way that doesn't start a physical reaction, that will help you sleep, where you can relax. And that's the key. So you know, what we might be talking about, like that other guy who said, what are we talking about with anxiety? What does it mean? It could mean sleep. Because somebody who's stressed all day won't sleep. Now, when you get up in the morning, if you've not had enough REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, then one of the first regions of your brain to suffer is emotional recognition in other people. So imagine for the day you couldn't pick up in other people's faces what emotion was going on for them. That would be a bad day. Because you'd be walking into people who were giving you the not right now, or I'll throw something at you. You know, you can only imagine now, and you know, we say to kids, you're always tired. But then as adults, we just expect people to get on with it, you know.
That's true.
If you've been asleep for 19 hours, you're over the drink drive limit in terms of attention and ability to react to things on the road. 19 hours.
So if you've been asleep for 19 hours?
No, if you've been awake for 19 hours, sorry.
Really?
Yeah, if you slept for 19 hours, you're a teenager.
It's the equivalent of being over the drink drive limit.
Well, it's 19 hours. You can think that I've had a hard day in the office, and then, I don't know, me and the missus are watching Games of Thrones, you know, and you're just having a bit of quality time after your 10 hours at work. But excuse me, can we come back to Nick's question, please?
Nick says...
Nick Davis, man, Jones.
Nick Davis.
Hello, Nick.
If he is, I'm assuming
Marcus.
If you're bringing innovation to IAPT, can we have rapid PTSD and trauma treatments included, like the blast technique?
Now, I mentioned Nick Davis to you before. Good friend, he comes on here a lot, and I told you about Nick Davis. I was attacked by a Staffordshire Bull Terrier, and he had PTSD, but I didn't know what that was at the time. I just thought I was panicking all the time, and he did wonders for me. But maybe one of the days we could get you together and have a nice chat.
Absolutely, yeah. We that's a really good point. PTSD used to be something that we thought was, you know, something that Evel Knievel had when it all went wrong for him and came out staggering about with smoke all over him. We know that people can get PTSD now. We know veterans come back with PTSD. We know people who come out of car accidents have PTSD. Anyone who's
relationships.
Absolutely, yeah. Anyone who's felt that their life's in danger. And one thing we do in IAPT is, of course, we are an NHS body, so we take evidence-based practice straight out the laboratories, the universities, everyone who's looking round at the latest technique that's useful, and we focus it back into the community the best way that we can. We in terms of innovation, we only use things that have got an evidence base behind them, so that we can say, the last 1,000 people that went through, these were the effects. We get a bell curve off that, and we can look at the most of people. So we only use what we call safe techniques. There's not to say that there aren't lots of techniques out there, but those are the ones we use. And one thing I was talking to Kev about is that not so long ago there was a conference in Ireland on either IAPT or PTSD, and one of the best things is boxing. boxing for PTSD now. Now we've got EMDR is a situation where we stimulate the hemispheres one after the other, and this stuff really works. It's phenomenal stuff. I was working down south, working one day in a big GP surgery, and I got there early, and there was a baby crying outside. Fully qualified granddad, by the way, granddad. and this baby was crying and screaming, and I've worked in what we call CAMS, children and adolescents. So I've been on the courses to use EMDR with both adults and children, and this mum had turned up early to wait for the midwife who was working next door. My missus is a midwife as well, so we talk sometimes.
And when it's nothing on the telly.
Yeah, that's it, yeah. She was on the telly last night, actually. Yeah. 5-star, the 9 o'clock, the Preston Royal Infirmary. Yeah. Anyway, so this woman was there with the baby, and she couldn't stop this baby crying. So I said, put her over your shoulder, and I tapped the bottom of the soles of her feet. She stopped crying.
Oh, bloody hell. I wish we'd had New Year when something was like that.
This woman, because she couldn't see what I was doing, I said, just hold your arm out and put her feet out, and I just tapped him, and this woman, what have you done? I was like, it's something we do, and she's like, can we do it? No, you can't do it all the time, and it's processing things. When we switch one side of the brain on and the other side off, and then the other side on, the other side off, and what it does, it mimics very carefully REM sleep.
Yeah.
This is what happens in REM sleep. Your eyes dart about.
So is this the method? Nick will be able to tell us more. Is this the method behind the blast technique then?
Well, the blast technique is a step on from this. But without Nick here, I won't talk about it. But I'd love to maybe get you both on one day so we can talk about it. But gang, we've been on now for an hour.
Oh my God.
So what we always like to do is if you've got any quotes or somebody you've had through life and you think you could help a young Marcus, or have you got something or an organisation or something you'd like to give back to everyone?
Right. Well, one thing you said was about how can people get help
Oh yeah,
in
how
the
can people
community.
help? Sorry.
And one of the kind of points we went to earlier, and do kick me if I start rolling on again,
No.
is that, we talked about mental health being like a broken leg, and suddenly realising that you get up with it one morning and you've got it. We know it's not like that. We know that people, like a swimming pool, we use that analogy, that we pull people out the deep end, and we concentrate on pulling them out the deep end, and if a little bit like an emergency service would, what we know is they've been in the shallow end for 12 months, splashing about and making some bad decisions, and you go down that slope and suddenly you're out your depth. If you're splashing about in the shallow end, don't wait for it to get worse. Get onto IAPT, go on Google, look at IAPT, get onto your local service, and you can refer yourself in. You can do it over the internet, or you can ring them up and talk to them. And go on, and you'll usually get an assessment within 72 hours, which will tell you what you need. They might say, no, listen, this is a phase you're going through, you'll be okay, or yeah, we can offer you this, or we can offer you that, or we've got another service that might be better for you, this, that, and the other. So I would urge anyone, don't wait for this to get to a point where you think it's bad enough to get in touch.
That's brilliant.
Go on and refer yourself in. In terms of quotes, you have to try and practice what you preach, don't you? But with these people around you that look angry, they're a pain in the arse, a road raging, be as kind as you can. They're having a bad day, and it could be you. And punishing them for having a bad day, it's like petrol on the fire. Give them a wide berth. Be as kind as you can. That's my a little bit of advice. I need reminding though. But thank you for having me.
No, thank you very much.
Yeah, jolly good. Thank you.
So gang,
Thank you to everyone that commented.
yeah, thank you for everyone. So until next week, gang, ta-ra a bit.
Listen.
And that's a wrap for another show. But if there are any comments or messages that you would like us to read out for our next podcast, please be in touch. There are also lots of different organisations at the bottom of this page, and hopefully they can help you or someone you care about. Please share this to spread the word. Until we talk next time, ta-ra a bit.
Listen.